Good. Okay, so here we go. Um, let's talk now about elevators. Um, you will have received from the Institute materials about what elevators are about. And I just want to check that with you, that each of you has received a handout and some examples of that. Is that true? When you signed up for this course, did you get course materials?
Yes.
Good, very good. So have those available to you, have a pen and paper, and so that you can make notes and also to go through the exercises with me. So I want to ask, has anybody, by a show of hands here, used the elevator before today? Yeah? No? All right. It's not so, if you have done a process in the last couple of years, it's not something that we have been using in the last couple of years. If you'd done a process many years back, you would have experienced it. But what we
I
use
did a
the
little, sorry, I did a
yeah,
little, I think in Q2 they touched on that,
yes, yes, exactly. So
if I recall correctly.
you would have
Yeah,
come across it in the graduate programs.
yeah,
Um,
okay.
we teachers, we love the tool of the elevator because it gives us and the students access to what are the patterns that are operating in a particular sphere of a person's life. Often these patterns are, um, we may never associate these patterns with what the issue is in our life. And the other great advantage of using an elevator is that it can illustrate to us how some patterns that may seemingly be unconnected at all, that these are operating together. So let's begin today by just noting what what's the issue for you that you would like to have some clarity about, you know? So, you know, what arena are you looking at? And for you, Amber, let's begin with you. What arena do you want to look at? Are we talking relationships? Are we talking work? What are we talking about?
It's work.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And Shannon, for you, what's the arena for you?
What I settled on earlier was what are the patterns that stop me from trusting and loving myself?
There you go. Perfect question. And Lydia, for you, what's the arena that you want to focus on today?
It's all about my relationship with my teenage daughter.
Yay. Very good.
Hmm.
How old is she?
Uh, about to turn 16 next month.
Very good. And
And help,
Stephanie,
please.
yeah, okay. And Stephanie, for you, what arena are you talking about today?
Relationships with friends and triggers coming from them.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Very good. And so, in order to make the elevator tool relevant, what we do is we ask, what are the patterns that are operating in this particular arena, right? And when we ask that question, we're not looking for a yes or no answer. In other words, we can't ask a question, for example, that might say, should I marry Harry or should I marry Bill? Right? No, that doesn't work in that way. Um, what we're looking for is, as I said, what are these patterns that are operating in this particular area? So what I suggest you do is now craft a question that starts with the words, what are the unidentified patterns that, all right? So I'll give you a moment to write that down. What are the unidentified patterns that? So, for example, there with Lydia, so what are the unidentified patterns that are getting in the way of my relationship with, and put this young lady's name down. All right. And Shannon, you had put yours out earlier. What are the unidentified patterns that? Can you Let us know what that was again.
Prevent me from trusting and loving myself.
Yeah, perfect. And Amber, for you, what do you think your question, how could you frame that question now? What are the unidentified patterns that, what follows after that for you? You're on mute, Amber. There you go.
Hey, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button.
No.
To prevent me from finding my work that is satisfying.
Yeah. I think that would work. Yeah.
Prevent me from working,
Mhm.
that make me avoid work.
Now, there's a couple of different questions in that. One might be, what are the patterns that would get in the way of me finding and finding fulfilling and lucrative employment, right? Another one, another question might be, what are the patterns that would get in the way of me taking action on that? So you might even combine those two questions. So you'd say, what are the patterns that get in the way of me finding fulfilling and lucrative work and taking action to do that? So it's no use here, it's no use just knowing what the patterns are. We also want to know what gets in the way of us taking action on it, right? And coming back to you, Stephanie, you were talking about friends and the triggers that come up. What sort of question can you craft there for you?
Yeah, what are the unidentified patterns that trigger my dark voice and make me feel unliked or judged amongst my closest friends?
Yes, that will work. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Yes, please, Lydia.
So is it better if the question is more specific? Let's say it's a relationship between two people. Is it okay to stay at the general level to say what are the unidentified patterns that get in the way of our relationship versus what are the unidentified pattern in certain area of the relationship, a specific challenge or trouble in or certain issue? What's the direction that you would advise us to go?
I would suggest to begin with that you cast the net in a wide form, right?
Mm.
You know, so that, for example, if you're talking about dealing with a 16-year-old daughter, you might say, what are the patterns that may get in the way of me being, you know, having a healthy relationship with her, or being, it might be an effective mom with her, right? You could, knowing how to use the elevator, and hopefully at the end of this session here, this web class, that you will have the confidence and the skill to be able to do a second elevator, which might be, for example, let's say you wanted to have a conversation with this young lady about her perhaps exploring her sexuality, right? And you'd say, you know, then you could refine it, have a second question that would delve in specifically in that one arena.
Okay.
All right, very good. All right.
Thank you.
Let's come back and take an overview of elevators and where they fit in to Hoffman's tools and practices. First of all, if we think in terms of the cycle of transformation, where the first step is becoming aware, what's happening in our life? How do we, having a format or a lens to be able to look at what's going on in this area of our life, the awareness tool of, you know, looking to see what these patterns are, where these patterns came from, how we learned them in our childhood, how they're operating in our life. And the elevator is a tool of awareness. That's what it's designed to do, to give us information about what's happening for us in this part of our life. The second step in the cycle of transformation is the expressive work. And there's many ways in which we can do that expressive work. For some people, journaling is a way to do that, to write about it. It helps them clarify their thoughts and their feelings. It shows them how these things may be, how they may progress in us, but also other ways for us of having expression is to voice it. And so during a process or during Hoffman Essential weekends and so on like that, we have been teaching you different ways to have an experience of catharsis, to be able to voice the resentment, the hurt, the pain, the loss, the grief that's going on inside of us, using our bodies, using our voice. All right. That's primarily the tool that we've been using at Hoffman to do that. There are other ways in which you can discharge that pain and hurt. You know, for those of you at home, you know, yelling into a pillow, or it may be getting in, hitting a golf ball, imagining that's, you know, the pattern is on the golf ball and giving it a good whack. It could be running down a beach and pounding into the sand as you run. It could be picking up rocks on the shore and throwing them out into the water and saying, I hate this pattern, I don't want it anymore, throwing it out, being very directive in your energy. The third step in the cycle of transformation involves compassion and forgiveness. That recognition, first of all, with ourselves. We've been teaching people now in all our programs about how to put your hand on your heart, connecting with yourself, finding self-love, self-compassion for yourself. The recognition of that these patterns were learned. We learned how to be this way growing up in our family of origin. And from that place, you know, it's the best that we could have done. We didn't know any better at the time. And this is, we've been acting it out unconsciously and without awareness ever since we learned to do that. And the fourth step in the cycle of transformation is finding a new way of being in the world. The primary tool that we use during the process is recycling, where we access our spiritual self, get information and a message from our spiritual selves as to how to be in a given situation. And there's a number of different ways in which we've taught over the years about recycling, and you can find that on our graduate section on our website. So coming back to the elevator and how it fits into that tool of awareness, it's also designed to bypass your intellect and to draw on the wisdom and the history of your spiritual self to not only find those patterns, but to identify them. And we can use that, our spiritual self, then to go deeper into any particular area that you're struggling with, that are these patterns that are driving unwanted reactions in our lives. All right? So we've been creating an elevator question, and that is the first part in the step of using the elevator. Today, I've asked you for different, questions in the arena that you want to work in. You could, for example, later down the road, in knowing how to use the elevator and how to get the benefit out of it, other questions you might ask, for example, what are the unidentified patterns that get in the way of achieving my vision, for example? Or, what are the unidentified patterns that keep me from creating a fulfilling, healthy, and loving relationship, right? Or maybe, coming back to you, Amber, things around being at work. It could be, what are the unidentified patterns that keep me from being fully empowered in my work, right? Or, for some people at different stages in their life where they're finding it difficult to commit to something, it might be, what are the unidentified patterns that drive my inability to commit to, for example, a relationship, or to my work, or to my vision, or even, to be happy in my home. What are the unidentified patterns that keep me from hearing and trusting and acting on the voice of my spiritual self? So these are sort of questions that you can use now going forward. Or it might even be, What are the unidentified patterns that got triggered at lunch today when I had lunch with Freddie? Right? Yeah. So now each one of you have your elevator questions down. So what I'm going to do is lead you through the experience of that. And that experience is within a short visualization. And so again, it's one of these situations where you're asking for information that is coming from your spiritual self, and just to trust whatever comes up. There's no right or wrong scenes. Just let it be what it is, right? So this is a practice in receptivity. So wherever you are now, just sit back, close your eyes, and see an elevator in front of you. It can be any type of elevator at all. One of these old-fashioned elevators in a New York hotel where you slide the cage across. Might be a glass and steel elevator on the outside of a modern hotel. So just imagine that you're standing, you and your spiritual self are standing outside an elevator. And the doors are open and you walk in. And you turn around and there's that control panel, but this time there's just one big button on that control panel that has your question written on it. What are the unidentified patterns that? And now with curiosity, because you want to know what's going on here, you reach out with one of your hands now, let yourself do that motion with your hand. You push the button and the elevator doors close. And the elevator starts moving down and down and down to an actual scene from your life. That scene might be today, it might be last week, it might be last year, it could be 20 years ago, 40 years ago. The elevator is moving down, moving down. And now the elevator stops and the doors open, and there in front of you is a scene from your life. So where are you? What's going on in the scene? Notice, in this scene, what are you feeling? For some of you, your body might be a clue. What's happening in your body, or your body language, might be a clue to you as to what's happening. All right? Is there anybody else there in the scene? What are they doing, or what are they saying? What do they say to you? What do you say to them? About how old are you in this scene? What's the mood in the scene? So what are you feeling? What are you thinking? What do you say to yourself? So just let that scene play out now. It's as if you're watching a movie. Let the scene play out, noticing what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing. And when that scene is complete, then open your eyes and take your pen and paper and to write down that scene in as much detail as possible. And when you're writing it out, write out what was happening, how old you were, what you were feeling, what you were thinking. what you were doing. I'm going to give you about 3-4 minutes now to write out that scene. We're going to take about 1 more minute now just to write out that scene. And you start bringing your words to a conclusion now. And when you finish writing this scene, we're going to take a second scene, all right? And so now closing your eyes, let that scene be alone as it is. Don't go analyzing anything here. Just closing your eyes, and you and your spiritual self back in the elevator. And again, you push the button, and again, you're moving down, down, going down to another scene from your life. The elevator is moving down, moving down. Now the elevator stops and the doors open. And there in front of you again is another scene from your life. And this time, where are you? What's going on now in this one? Again, how old are you? Are you on your own? Or are there other people in the scene? Again, notice, what are you feeling? Perhaps checking in with your body to notice what's happening there. Your body will give you a clue as to what you're feeling, what's happening for you. What are you doing in this scene? If there are other people there, what do they say to you? What do you say to them? How do they treat you? Allow the scene to play out. And when you have that scene, and open your eyes and write out the scene, making note of what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what you were doing. And when you have that scene now, just bring your words to a close. Just take another 30 seconds or so. Okay, so let's come back now and have a look at the information here. Now, in the materials that you received in signing up here, you would have had an example of a scene, right? So there's one here now in this handout. It says, seems to be a little girl. I'm sitting on my front porch. I'm 6 years old. I'm locked out of the house. Nobody's home. I'm waiting for my mom to get home. I have to pee. I can hear the neighborhood kids playing and laughing. I wish I could play with them, but nobody invites me. I feel left out. When my mom gets home, she yells at me because I forgot my key. But actually, she forgot to leave it out for me. But I don't say that. I just feel grateful to go in the house. Right? Now, what you might do now is to get a pen. And what we're going to do is we're going to start underlining the patterns in that scene. So let's look at this one here. First one, I'm sitting on my front porch. So in this case, it implies here that sitting is a pattern. It's not taking action. It's being passive. Now, in this example that was in the packet of information here, the question was, what are the unidentified patterns that stand in the way of achieving my vision? And so if you don't take action, well, that's one of the patterns that would get in the way of achieving your vision. The second one here, I'm locked out of the house. And so the pattern then is, I'm locked out, right? And so in your life, when you start looking at the arena that you're looking at, do you feel locked out? Do you feel as if there's no way for you to participate? It may be okay for other people to do that, but I feel locked out by others. Or do you sabotage yourself? And the impact is that you block your own success, right? Next one here is the pattern of being no one is home. So is that something here? Do you abandon yourself? Right? You know, I'm the next one here. I'm waiting for my mom to get home. Again, here we are at not taking action, being passive. It's showing up again here. And it could also be, you know, wanting to be rescued. You can see how that, waiting for other people to take action, waiting for other people to help you move forward, would get in the way of you doing your vision. Yeah. Next one here, I have to pee. So that would be more on the body level. Do you ignore what's going on in your body? Do you not listen to your body? Do you miss all those signals? You know, like what's happening in your stomach or the headaches or all that, right? Next one here, I wish I could play. That's that wishful thinking, magical thinking. And tied to that one there also, nobody invites me to play. So again, here's this theme emerging, waiting for other people to take the lead, right? Feeling left out. Do you feel like an outsider? You know, my mom yells at me. Is this a pattern that you learned from her? Do you now yell at yourself, beat yourself up, speak, you know, harshly to yourself? This one here, I forgot my key. Are you forgetful? Is this one of the ways that you sabotage yourself? Right? Mom says, you know, mom yells at you for not taking the key, but I don't say to her, she was the one who forgot to leave the key for me. So not speaking up for yourself, taking the blame for other people's actions. And the last line in there is, I just feel grateful to get into the house. So that could imply here settling for crumbs in your life, right? So now it's time for you to look at your own scene, to look at one, either the first scene or the second scene. So now to look at your scene and to go over what you have written. And it's all in the words. You don't have to extrapolate. It's all there in the words that you're using, right? So first of all, see if you can identify some patterns in that scene. Right? See if you can identify patterns in the scene. And what you could do is you could underline them or draw a circle around them. Right? Now, just by a show of hands here or using the reaction button that's on the bottom, maybe on the bottom of your toolbar there, it says reactions. How many of you by a show of hands here can find patterns in the scene? Yeah? Yeah, good. Very good. So let's take an example here. Stephanie, I wonder, would you be willing to share your scene?
Yes, sure.
So just read it as you've written. You don't have to edit, okay?
Oh, reading it out loud. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to reconsider?
No, it's okay.
Very good.
It's long though. It's gonna be some time. All right. I'm sitting in the car and enjoying our group call. Nobody said hello directly to me, and I felt I was not acknowledged. We later joined small group sessions to play a game, and I felt out of place and thought that people were disappointed to be on my team. I tried to be funny and engaging,
Okay, so let's stop right there. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Because you've got a whole bunch of patterns in there.
Oh,
What are
I
the
know.
ones that you see? What are the ones you see in that?
First one, nobody said hello, feeling left out and having self-doubt.
Yeah, huh? Okay.
Not speaking up as a result, so fear of being judged, feeling out of place, assuming to be an outsider and disliked, and then
So hang
trying to
on
be
now.
funny using humor.
Yeah. So one of the things that's showing up here
Mhm.
in these individual patterns is also for you, it's really important not only to be seen, but to be recognized, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And that one of the ways that you know that you are being recognized is that people acknowledge you or they speak to you or in some way show that they've noticed you, right?
Yes.
One of the other things that need for recognition or need to be seen, it drives that behavior in you of trying to be funny or whatever it is to draw attention to yourself,
Yeah.
right? Now, when we go back to the original question, Stephanie, that you had, right,
Yeah.
which was again, remind us here what that question was.
What are the unidentified patterns that are triggering my dog voice to make me feel unliked amongst my closest friends?
Yeah. And so now, can you see how these patterns that you've just identified help you answer that question?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not only in the specifics, but in the bigger question that when you're with your friends, it's really
Mhm.
important for you to feel seen, acknowledged, and recognized. Because
Yes.
otherwise, you get triggered by your dark side and you'll withdraw or you'll make assumptions about what other people are about. Yeah?
Yes. No, it's a really good point.
Yeah, very good. And Lydia, can we come to you? Would you be willing to read your, one of your scenes?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, I have a question. I'll read first. So it's interesting. I'll just make one comment. The first scene is a new scene. Like I never like it's not real life, but it somehow
Mhm.
came to me. The second one is a scene that came to me almost all the time when I do elevators. It's
Okay, let's take that
so
second
which
scene.
okay. Um. So I was by myself in a dark wood area. Very tall trees. There's no road. I sensed something is chasing me. I was petrified. I had to run and run and run away from this place. And I keep running. I keep running. There is no end to this road. There is no end to this place. I look around. I see nobody. I just see endless wood area. Next to the wood area, there is a bed. On the bed was my dying brother.
Mm-hmm. Now that's the
He
second
for
scene.
some
Okay.
yeah, so that for some reason that bed was moving along with me. When I was running in the wood, that bed
Mm-hmm.
just moved with me, and I just kept running. I had to get away, but I can't.
Okay, so let's talk about that first scene. You're in the woods, you're alone. About how old do you think you would have been in that scene?
I was 7.
Okay. And there's tall trees, there's no road. What patterns can you identify in that scene?
Um, alone,
Yeah,
alone,
yeah.
fear,
Fear
fear
of
of
what?
something.
Yeah, fear of the unknown. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no help, helpless. It's almost like desperation. I always feel
Yeah,
like desperation, like I cannot find the end.
right.
Um, compelled to do something. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm compelled to be out of this place. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
have to get out,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how tired and how endless this looked like. No one to turn to. No
That's
one.
right. So there's
Absolutely
no
no
help.
one.
Yeah, because there's
Yeah.
nobody there.
Hmm.
Now, when we look and see how those patterns that you identified, how do they help you answer the question that you began with? Because the question is something to do with dealing with your daughter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So what patterns do you see now getting in the way of your relationship with your daughter?
I definitely feel the same feelings, which is
Mm-hmm.
there's no end to this terrible relationship.
Right.
And I'm really, really scared
Mm-hmm.
about what it might turn into, like
Right.
this relationship, and what she might turn into, what our
Right.
relationship might turn into. Most important is what she might turn into if she keeps
Yeah.
going this way.
So Lydia, let's go back to the very basics of this scene. You're alone. And so do you
Mhm.
feel alone in dealing with the challenges that you have with your daughter?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, without getting into specifics of your family and what's happening, that's the way forward here might be, for instance, to work with a therapist or work with a trusted friend, so that you can share the challenges that you have, so that you can gain insight and wisdom and not have to figure it all out on your own, right? Because in that
Mm.
scene also, because you said, I see nobody,
Mm.
that's what gives rise to the feeling of helplessness, and that tied to the road is endless. You're a mom, you're going to be a mom till the day you die, right? You're that girl's mom. That road is endless. And so that sense of helplessness and hopelessness, because there's nobody there to help you, is what keeps you stuck, right?
Mm.
So this is how we start to get information. Now what I want to do is I want to come back to everybody here, and for each of you, look at your own scenes now, and let's start to look. Here's some pointers as to how you can look here, right? So what are the feelings that are exhibited in the scene? Like Lydia, you just talked about being helpless, hopeless, and feeling alone, right?
Mm.
So for each of you now here, noticing the feelings that are in, one, just pick one of the scenes to work with. Does it point to fear? Does it point to compulsive stuck places or blocks? For example, it feels hopeless to me. Or does it point to certain expectations other people should, that other people have to respond to me before I can feel okay or at ease in their company, right? So is this something that shows up frequently in your life? Do you end up feeling stuck? Do you end up feeling alone all the time? Do you feel that other people have to come towards you before you can actually feel comfortable in the situation? So anywhere where it's emotionally charged, pay attention to that. Okay? Now, the second thing, a way that you can look at the scene in identifying the patterns, have a look at the thoughts and beliefs that are in the scene. You know? So, for example, Stephanie, in your scene, you talked about the idea that you had the belief that other people had opinions of you, and probably those opinions weren't, hey, isn't Stephanie wonderful and great? more than likely our dark side is saying to us, oh, there's something wrong with me, or I'm not good enough, and other people are better, funnier, richer, more attractive, whatever it is. Look at these thoughts and beliefs that we have that are now showing up in the scene. Maybe, for instance, that we think of ourselves as not being smart or clever. We might even say things like, I'm stupid, so I shouldn't even try. I give up. I withdraw. I play small. Or it may be that I act the clown in order to try and bring levity to the situation. Okay? Another one here to have a look at is, what are the behaviors that are in the scene? What are you doing? Like Lydia, you talked about, you have to run. You have to run as hard as you can, no matter how tired you are. You just have to keep running, right?
Yeah.
For somebody else, it might be, I'm going to stay quiet. I'm not going to draw attention to myself. I'm going to hide away, right? So that hiding out could take place physically. We just absent ourselves, or we end up paying attention to the inessential around the house, or it may be we're there, but we're not engaged. Emotionally, we're not present, right? Or another person, it may be in a situation, we act superior. You feel superior? Or it might be that where we're in the company of other people that we judge to be superior, we take on the role of being inferior. And the last one here, just to look at, what are the physical realities in the scene? Are you a loner? Do you want to be alone? Why? Why is that? What does that point to in you? Do you want to, or do you have to prove your independence, your self-reliance? Does it point to a pattern of being overly self-reliant, right? So as you review the scenes here, what are the overall messages and the moods and the scenes? What are the implications and assumptions that are there? Now, I ask that you write out the scene. Everything you need is what you write down. You don't have to extrapolate out of the scene. Everything you need is right there. And there may be equivalencies in the scenes. So we talked about, let's say somebody had a question that was like, what are the unidentified patterns that cause me to put up walls, for example, in my relationship? Well, maybe you have patterns around, I want to do this myself. I want to figure it all out on my own. Well, there's the information for you right there. That's how you put up walls in your relationship, because you have a belief that I should figure this out on my own. I should be self-reliant, right? So I'm going to ask for one more example here. Amber, would you be willing to share a scene?
Holy cow.
Holy cow, yeah.
So it's very interesting to me because my scene, I feel very tender today. And so I'm afraid to lose control in front of the group and cry.
Yeah.
So anyway, my scene was a forest. It's with trees. And I feel alone and I like being alone. I feel safe. I feel cozy, comfortable, fresh air, smell of evergreens. I'm in a forest like Lydia, but completely feeling safe.
Yeah.
And
So let's come back now, Amber, just to this piece alone.
yes,
What was the original question?
the original question is, what are the unidentified patterns that prevent me from taking action? So I'm sitting in this forest and there's a bear.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's a safe bear. It's like an animated bear.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just silent.
Yeah.
So I feel like, first of all, sitting still,
Yeah.
that I isolate myself. I
Mm-hmm.
feel safe being alone.
Mm-hmm. And it's comforting for you to be alone.
Yes.
Even though you're in a forest, even though there's a bear in the forest, you feel comfortable being on your own. Right. And can you see how that gets, these patterns are getting in the way of you taking action?
Yes.
Makes sense to you? Yeah.
Yes. Very
Now,
much.
if you lived on an island on your own, right, it might be bliss for you, but unfortunately, we live in a world where there's lots of people around us and we have to interact with people all the time. And so the implication here is that when you're around other people, it's likely you're going to stop and be still and withdraw. Yeah. In order to feel safe, in order to feel comfortable in your own skin. And so these patterns now, as we identify the patterns, the next step is to actually recycle them, right? And some of them are going to cause so much distress and pain in our life that it's probably useful for you to do some cathartic work around it. No, I'm not talking to you, Amber, in particular. I'm actually talking to everybody who may be listening to this, is to take action to dissipate that hurt, that pain, that grief, that loss, that resentment, so that we can discharge that energy that's controlling our bodies, is controlling the way we show up in the world. And then, having discharged that energy through using your voice and using your body, then to take those patterns through the rest of the cycle of transformation. Where did you learn that? Where did you learn, for example, to withdraw, to be on your own so that you could feel safe? Or, for you, Lydia, you were talking about, where did I learn to run? Where did I learn to keep running even though I'm exhausted? Or where did I learn that the situation is hopeless and that there's nobody there for me? Right? To have some compassion for that young person inside of us who grew up in that environment. This is what we endured growing up. That's the pattern tracing, the compassion. Bringing it back to the parents. Where did they learn that? What was it like for them growing up? How did we get that message from them? And then to take it through the final step of recycling the pattern. Now, Shannon, we haven't been asking you about any one of your scenes. Is there one of the scenes that you want to read here today?
I just turned my camera off because I have to start driving. But mine was um well, mine was mainly feelings because it was recent things, and I didn't even have time to describe like where I was as much as the thoughts going through my head because
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens to me.
Okay.
But I did identify many patterns from those thoughts, and it's more of uh, feeling unsafe, self-doubt,
Mm-hmm.
not trusting others. But then the biggest new thing I got, because obviously I just did the process, is not trusting others, but taking a look at, am I really trustworthy to other people?
Mm-hmm.
Came up for me. And also that abandoning myself, my fear of
Yeah.
abandonment, but abandoning myself.
Yeah. If you grow up in an environment, and again, I'm speaking to everybody here, not just to one person. If you grow up in an environment where it's not safe, we learn that the world might not be a safe place. We learn that we shouldn't trust other people, that we can only rely on ourselves, or in some situations, it may even lead us to the idea that I can't even trust myself. And so, you know, look what would fall out of that. For example, if you're in a relationship, you can't trust your partner. How does that drive your way of being with them? Does it set you up to always look for validation or reinforcement or uh, reassurance, rather? You know. Now, one of the interesting things here is there are times when we're in a scene and it looks all positive to us. And Amber, you were talking about, I'm in a forest, there's a bear there, but I'm comfortable with the bear. But I'm happy because I'm alone. And so even on the face, if on the face of it, the scene looks all positive, have a look and see underneath. Is it a situation that I can only feel safe and comfortable if I am alone? Right? And sometimes people will get a scene where the door's open and there's nothing there. It's all black. Right? Well, then you ask yourself the question, what am I feeling? You might have things like, I'm scared because I don't know what's out there. I can't see. Right? So no matter what happens when the door's open, there's valuable information there. Notice what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you say to yourself. It's like, there's nothing there for me. Is that your belief about how the world is with you? All right. Earlier on when I led you through the visualization, I said to you to put in mind that you're going to go down and that your spiritual self is going to give you a scene from your life. You can actually work with fantasy scenes. Usually it's easier to work with situations from your life because you were there, you know all about it, you know where it started, how it ended, how it played out. And from that point of view, my suggestion to you is that you ask your spiritual self to give you scenes from your life. And so when we ask the elevator question, we're asking our spiritual self to give us the information. And how our spiritual self gives us that information is in imagery, because that's how our emotional brain is set up. It's in imagery. And so then, looking at the scene, identifying the patterns in the scene, is how you decode the information that your spiritual self is giving you. Now we have about 10 minutes left here. And so if you have specific questions, I'd be very happy to answer them with you.
I
Amber.
have a question.
Yeah.
So for me, this feels very effective. What I have trouble doing is doing it on my own.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I need somebody to lead me through it for
Sure.
me to be able to.
Yeah.
So
What to do?
who can do that for me?
There's a number of different ways that you can do that. For instance, you might be still close to people that you did a process with, if you did a process, right? That you could reach out to one of your classmates there and say, hey, can you help me with an elevator? Because often, and it's very often the situation, that we're so close to the scene that we can't see it. It's like, you know, you can't see the woods for the trees, right? And so working with another person who uh, you feel safe with can help you doing that. Another option might be, for instance, to go to one of the graduate gatherings that are perhaps in your area. You know, that's another one. Another option would be to work with a teacher. It's, you know, teacher from your process, your own teacher, or any one of the other teachers too, because we all tend to work in the same way, right? So there's three ways right off the bat, all right? But I agree with you, Amber. Often it's easier to work with another person because they can ask you questions like, for example, oh, could you have a pattern of? And you could say, yeah, or no, that's not what it is at all. And in that way, that interaction is going to help you understand more about what's going on. Yeah, I love that question. Thank you, Amber. Another question. Anybody else got another question now today?
I'm still digesting it. I think
Mm-hmm.
the usage, is it more helpful to do the general questions, or is it even a tool to use after a vicious cycle occurred to like write it down and like not, instead of taking an elevator, let the spiritual self take you to a scene, actually during this exercise, just with a vicious cycle, you know, you just work through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the beauties of, you're right on track, Stephanie, because vicious cycles and elevators are both tools of awareness. They help us discover what the patterns are in a particular situation. One of the beauties about the elevator is that we recommend that you go down and take at least 2, 3, even 4 scenes, because then you might see a theme emerge. So, for example, in each of the scenes, let's say you're alone, right? And so, what does that theme of being alone imply or set up for you? Is this how you sabotage yourself? Is this how you stay safe? Is this how you um, hide out in the world? You know? So a theme, the elevator can show you themes that emerge. Whereas if you look at a vicious cycle that is centered on one particular event, you're just noticing all the patterns in that one event. That makes sense? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions now?
I just have a very specific question.
Yeah.
You know, for me, my you know, the scene that always come up. Why does it always come up? And why is it always me running? And it will always there's my brother who's passed away when I was
Mm-hmm.
young.
Mm-hmm.
Always he's running along with me.
Right.
How do I look at the situation? I feel like I'm stuck somewhere in the scene that I can't get out because it kept coming up. It kept coming up.
Yeah.
There's something unresolved. It feels like on that.
Well, Lydia, that what you're talking about actually happens for many people. That the same scene keeps coming up, and what it's pointing to is that the patterns in that particular scene are playing out in many different arenas in your life. You know, the fact that your brother died, right? That sets you up to feel alone. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
one of
And
the
so,
first times when I deeply felt alone and
yes.
helpless. By the way, because nobody could help me to help him.
Yeah. Right. Right. And so again, the the patterns that were set up for you when your brother died, those feelings of being alone, that there's nobody talks to you about it because there's nobody there. There's nobody to help you. There's the feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. You can see how that's going to play out in all these different arenas in your life. You know, so that what you asked today is something that impacts many people. You are not alone in that. I can guarantee you that. Right? And so again, this is where accessing your own spiritual self and asking her and saying, in this particular situation, help me. How can I be? It's not always what do we do, but more often it's how can we be in this situation? And to just listen, allow her to guide you. It's a way forward, right? Very good. So I mentioned earlier that because this web class is being recorded, you have access to this recording for the next 30 days that you can go back and listen to it again. Hopefully you find more nuggets of knowledge in there, right? Also, if you go to our website, you go to hoffmaninstitute.org and you go to audio tools, you're going to have that visualization of leading you through the elevator for yourself, right? And it's also on our Hoffman app. So it's there as well for you. So those are other additional resources that are available to you. All right. So just want to say thank you. And before I close for tonight, I want to ask you, Amber, is there one thing that stands out for you? What have you learned for yourself for tonight?
I learned, I feel like it was very effective, and both of my scenes are opposite, but exactly the same. I learned more about myself. Thank you.
Oh, very good. And Stephanie, what's one thing that you've learned for yourself tonight?
That my patterns are still very much present and active, even though I'm and not necessarily recognized by me, even though I try to be very present with those.
Very good. And what I want to say to you is our patterns show up in different arenas of our life. And so we need to deal with them in each of those particular arenas. So the same pattern may show up in work in one way. It'll show up in your relationship with your partner or your loved ones in another way. So we need to recycle them and deal with them in each arena. For you, Lydia, what's one thing that you've learned for yourself tonight?
I learned how to we recognize how those patterns still runs in my life. I think previously I was able to run into a scene and see the pattern, and then I don't know what to do with it. And then how do I use those patterns to answer my question on the elevator? That's where I get stuck. So now I feel like I could I found a way. This is what I learned today. Just how to use those patterns to answer my question. Sorry, there's sports around here.
Yeah. And one thing I'd say there, Lydia, also is pay attention to that pattern of running, even though you don't have any energy left. That'll really harm your body. Be careful about that. And for you, Shannon, what's one thing that you've learned for yourself tonight?
Well, a new tool that I think will be helpful because I get a lot of, I do my quad checks in writing. And I was thinking I could even use that, just looking back at my journal, this tool to find patterns.
Okay.
In my past writing.
Yeah,
and
that's
a
right.
reminder that there are tools and that things get worse if I don't use them.
Yes, indeed. So good night, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your questions. and sharing of these parts of your lives. It's how we all learn. So good night, everybody. Look forward
Thank
to seeing
you.
you
Bye.
all somewhere down the road. And as I said, you don't have to do these things on your own. You can reach out and get some help. All right? That's what we're here for.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Be well now. Bye-bye.